When she was 18 years old, Daisy Strongen underwent a gender transition because she thought she wanted to become a man. 4 years later, she regrets it and faces the irreversible impacts of that choice. Daisy says her transition was sparked by depression, confusion surrounding her gender, and excessive internet use. She even shared her own transition journey for thousands on social media.
I go by Ali now because I am a female to male transgender. That is how I identify right now.
Directly following her high school graduation, Daisy underwent masculizing hormone therapy that can reduce estrogen production, create a deeper voice, more body.
This is sick. This is sick. The fact that we have kids, and let's call them what they are. They're not young people. They're not young adults. These are kids, children. How do we know? Because almost every other law points toward this reality. A 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old upwards to 18 years old is considered a child under law. But for some reason, all of that goes out the window when it comes to these ideological issues. That's why I say it's sick. That we are literally influencing, or not us necessarily, but as a culture, there has been an acceptance of the influence on our children to do things that they will never be able to reverse again. Things that are going to traumatize them in ways that we have not actually fully seen the extent of. Because let's be real, this is a new phenomenon. It's a new fad. It's a new trend. And we don't know what the actual ramifications are. We don't know what the long-term effects truly look like. We know that there are kids who are taking their own lives. We know that there are now adults who have, made these decisions that are now regretting and looking to transition back to their original state. That those who thought this was going to make them happy never actually found that happiness or that satisfaction, that contentment, and therefore they are now in a deeper state of depression. We've seen that, but we don't know what it looks like to have a generation of children who have undergone these sort of ideological based, quote unquote, progressive ideas that have destroyed them. When it's an adult making a decision like this, I'm okay. Like, I don't subscribe to that. I'm not going to buy into your delusion. I'm good off that. But when it is a child, that's where it's my business now, whether it's my child or yours. That's where I can no longer remain silent. It's no longer a you thing. Oh, I'm making a decision, based upon what's going to make me happy. But the moment you start to push that messaging, that propaganda onto the youth. And I recently did a video of a teacher, a woman who then pretends to be a man, speaking on how it is necessary to have these transformer flags, hanging up in classrooms to make the students feel safe. No, what makes a student feel safe is a safe environment where there is a stable, functional, highly functioning, if not at the very, very least, somebody who is not mentally ill in a position where they are essentially interacting and engaging with kids. I know this sounds cruel. It may sound judgmental to some, but this is a message from a loving place to say these individuals need help, psychiatric help, not affirmation. They need help. They need psychiatric evaluations that are honest and that are going to lead them to some sort of treatment. A child, when they are in the most desperate place in their sort of life, their hormones all over the place, puberty hits, you're confused, you feel that your body is, something is wrong with you, you're morphing, you're changing, you're in the in-between stages. Things get real weird during that time. This has been happening since time immemorial, since the beginning of time. Nothing new here. But the fact that we're now saying, you know what? Yeah, you actually are in the wrong body. Let's put you on these medications that even adults suffer under. I mean, some of these hormone blockers, the estrogen blockers, etc. These are things that they put on cancer patients These are no joke. I mean, these kids are having menopausal, postmenopausal sort of symptoms as kids because of a decision that adults have made. There's no such thing as a transformer child. Let me repeat. There's no such thing as a transformer child, period. There is an adult who is either too narcissistic or too afraid to make a different and better decision for their kid. And that's why we have stories like this one. I'm going to let the young lady continue to tell her story. But every time I see this, it riles me up. And I know I can't avoid it like I did in the past because it's too controversial subject or, some people maybe. No, I can't continue to circle the subject. I can't do it. This is a mental illness. That's what it is. A severe form of mental illness. And we used to recognize it as such not too long ago, before it became trendy, before it became in vogue, before it became so lucrative, so profitable, to where these doctors are making millions of dollars off of these kids' backs from the time they're young to the time they're adults. It's a lifetime guarantee. From the moment that the child is quote unquote affirmed and they start to give them medications, that's a lifetime prescription of medications right there. Plus the surgeries that go on top of that. Me and my girl watching a story about, real backwards ass story. The mom becomes a dad, dad becomes a mom. So the chick becomes a dude, dude becomes a chick. It's a very, very strange documentary. And in that, you basically see kind of this thing of, once the woman or the man became a woman, the surgeries that this individual underwent cost $200,000+ US. $200,000 worth of surgeries just to look the part. Face surgeries, body surgeries, continuous hair surgeries, all sorts of stuff to look the part. So just imagine how much money is being pocketed through this industry. And that's the part I want to highlight, is to say there's a propaganda machine that is pushing this. It's not about affirming people. It's not about making sure that these kids, aren't suffering and aren't depressed and hating themselves. No, they care nothing about any of that. They're pushing them through. They're processing them, like they're pigs at the slaughter or something like that. But again, I'm going to let this story continue.
Hair and more muscle mass.
I've officially been through the first year of my second puberty. 1 year of testosterone injections once a week, and this is what I look like. This is what I sound like. This is who I am.
2 years later, Daisy had her breasts permanently removed. She had already changed her name, was dressing as a man, and says she was finally perceived as a man in public.
There was sort of this high that came from it, that came from the control that I felt like I had about the way that other people saw me.
But
imagine having to now go through life with that voice. And that's a very familiar voice. I lived in the Bay Area and I would hear that voice quite frequently. It's the voice of a young woman who was put on testosterone and now has this in-between voice. Not to say that some men don't have higher pitch voices and some women don't have lower, tone voices or whatever it may be, right? It's to say that these are that's an after effect. That's a byproduct. And I fear, for the sake of this individual, are they going to be able to have children or not? If blessed enough, yes. If not, that's the likelihood, because it is messing with the entire reproductive system. That's what we're talking about. God gave you what you have. Life gave you, if you want to take it out of religious context, you were born with what you have. You were born as what you are. Now, coming to appreciate what you are is something completely different. All of us have some level of insecurity about something on our bodies, and we either learn to love it or we essentially beat ourselves up about it. Or in this day and age, some people just look to eradicate it by making a synthetic version. People are making entire new faces and stuff like that. I'm not a big dude, but I would never do knee surgery to get taller. I am who I am and I'm okay with it. I'd rather not suffer some consequence for such a superficial thing. If I can't appreciate myself for who I am now, then it doesn't matter what I put on top. There's always going to be insecurities that are not dealt with in a healthy form, processed in a healthy way. And that's what these kids are being deprived of.
When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Daisy says the high she had from her gender changes began to wear off. But her depression and feeling of incompleteness lingered, and this confusion only grew as she felt drawn to motherhood and to Christianity, ultimately leading to what she says was a necessary yet terrifying decision to detransition.
And I was like so terrified because I didn't know if I would be able to find a partner. Now being a woman with a deep voice and no breasts, like just living my life as that was just very terrifying to me and just like sad and overwhelming. It's like, this is forever. Like, these scars are forever. This voice is forever.
Her attempt to become a man remains evident in her daily life, even now as a wife and mother. Just moments after giving...
Well, that's beautiful news. And I know, again, there are women out there who never went through any of these procedures, processes, or, this deceit, and are still not able to have children. And, I hope and pray and wish for anybody in that situation who wants to have children that you have and are afforded the opportunity to do so. If that be your life path, then absolutely. If you will be a good parent, I really hope that you are able to have kids. But this is something that is chemical castration is what they call it, right? When it at least comes, to the male. And then I guess you could say technically, for a woman, it is messing with natural processes that we don't know whether or not these things are going to be long term. There are a lot of effects that are for sure long term, but we don't know what the ramifications. Just like the Jabski, right? The Fauci's ouchie. Now, some of us knew, those of us who didn't get the Jabski Wabski, we understood that whatever the hell that is, I don't want in my body. Y'all don't even know what that is. Why would I take that from you when I definitely don't know what the hell's in there? And I for sure don't know what it does, but all I know for a fact is that it's no good for me. So on that side, and this is another conversation entirely, but it's always, affirming my body, my choice. But then when it came to something like that, nope, all of a sudden not your body. Only when it's unaliving your child and when it comes to a teenager making a life-altering decision based upon external influences, pressures from those who are supposed to be supporting them and loving them and caring for them. And speaking of that, I actually found a clip not too long ago that led me down a rabbit hole. So me and my girl watched this, at least half, if not 2/3 of a Jordan Peterson interview. Some of them can be long. I love my dude. JP, I got nothing but love for you, but 2-hour therapy session can be a bit much on a Sunday afternoon. So this was the original video that I came across. I might just fast forward to the main story of it all.
Done transitioning, so I was in this place of like, I don't really know where to go next, and things are just getting worse, and it just kept getting worse.
Okay. And you're 15 now?
Yeah, I was 14, 15.
Okay, now when do you find another therapist?
16, 17, I believe.
Okay, and you said that was effective.
Yes.
Okay, tell me that story.
Well, I had sort of started opening up and realizing I needed to deal with a lot of the sexual trauma that I had.
Okay, opening up to who?
I had talked a little bit to my parents about it and sort of just came to terms with it in my own
Okay, so
head.
you revealed some of it to them?
Yes.
How did they react?
Vaguely. I revealed some of it, and they were very, very...
So a little bit of context about this young woman's story. Basically, at the age of around 13, 14, she essentially started having some of the ideas that a lot of these young people are having in this situation, which is, I don't belong in my body. Now, she grew up being a tomboy. That is now obviously being seen as, well, it definitely means you're not a girl. You must be a boy. Back in the day, you could just be a tomboy. So in essence, she gets to a place where she is now hearing these messages on the internet, etc., that are telling her that she is indeed in the wrong body. She already feels extremely insecure about her own body, as do all of us when we are maturing into, older stages of adolescence and in teenagehood, etc. And so she ends up basically having a teacher who refers a counselor. That counselor, quote unquote, or therapist, is part of the cabal. Right? That's the little conspiracy theorist to me. But, it is part of the bail movement and says, you know what? Yeah, this actually isn't body dysphoria. This isn't, you having these ideas that were implanted into your psyche by the far left woke ideologues. No, you are indeed a boy. So let's get you on the path to fulfilling that. Let's get you on medications, etc. Mind you, this happened in a 1-hour session with a therapist, quote unquote, who should be debarred at this point, who should have their license revoked from them at this point. And so she basically goes on this journey where, her parents are coerced or told that she is going to unalive herself, etc. If she doesn't do it, her parents, really don't want to do it, but they end up doing it because they're so afraid. They use a lot of those manipulation tactics to get the parents on board, and they end up saying, okay, we'll do it. We don't want to lose our daughter. And so they end up putting her onto these medications as fast as possible because they want to get to their money as fast as possible. And, they also do what they call a top surgery. They remove her breasts, which I couldn't even fathom as a woman now becoming an adult woman, knowing that they allowed for that to happen to you. There's a difference. You're 30, 40 years old and you decide to do that. That's between you and the damn donkey you rode in on. But a child having a decision like that then made, not just by them, because their decision should mean nothing in that context. It's something that's going to impact you for the rest of your life. But this is this young lady's story. And so, again, we now find ourselves in a place where she is basically coming to terms that, oh, I'm actually not a transformer. But when I needed that most, they weren't there to protect me. So
Very concerned and very distressed. And I think they immediately sort of questioned why I was in gender therapy. And they immediately wanted to put me in treatment for sexual assault only.
Oh, I see. Okay. So once they had the other details,
Yes.
they could put 2 and 2 together.
Right.
And so they encouraged you to find another therapist. They helped. How did that play
They
out?
helped me find another
They helped you.
therapist, yeah.
Okay. So you found another therapist. Why did you find a different therapist?
Because the therapy that I was doing was so surface level and wasn't actually addressing any issues in my mind. It was just creating.
forgot about that part in the interview. Y'all can watch the entire interview. I'll make sure to link that. But yeah, this therapist never asked about things that had happened in her life, which is the blaring red flag to me. That's why I say she's the cabal. She's a part. Like, all she cared about was making sure that there was this transition taking place. She didn't ask her about any childhood experiences, any traumas, which there were plenty of them. She had been sexually assaulted a host of times, multitude of times, and none of that came into play when it came to her mental health. Instead, they were just trying to get to where they wanted to get to. There's one location for these people, and that's getting a child onto these hormone blockers, getting them these surgeries in order to affirm them in their mental illness.
More issues and giving
Why did
me-
you come to that conclusion?
Because they kept affirming that I was somehow intrinsically male and that would solve all my problems. And then once I matched the outward appearance of a male and I didn't feel better, they had no answers for me.
I see. Okay. And then you open up to, okay, so then you start more deeply considering the potential effect of the sexual abuse.
Yes.
Then you talk to your parents. Then they help you find another therapist.
Right.
Okay. How does that therapist differ from the previous therapist?
That therapist barely spoke about my gender. We didn't even discuss it. Maybe one. We've talked about it maybe once. We went over it and I said, yeah, I've been trans-identified. And then we just sort of only really dealt with my childhood trauma, my sexual assault.
How was your new therapist trained? What was their specialty?
DBT and CBT were their therapies.
PhD psychologist?
Yes.
Do you know where they were trained?
I'm
by any
not
chance?
sure.
Okay, fine. But a PhD
Yeah,
psychologist.
PhD psychologist.
Okay. And it was a more behavior therapy oriented approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and what did they do with you?
We went through dialectical behavioral therapy, and then I also did something called imaginal exposure therapy, which sort of helped me remember a lot of the gaps that I didn't actually have filled in. And then once we did that, we just did a lot of general talk therapy.
Okay, why do you think that? What did you talk about that you think was helpful?
The number one thing that I think was helpful that we talked about is how that experience from childhood made me think about what it meant to be female and what external
what did you
factors.
conclude?
I concluded that I had been attributing a lot of self-hatred to femaleness.
Yeah.
I had been putting a lot of my own experiences onto femaleness as a whole, and I had been taking that out of myself for a very long time.
Right. So femaleness as the
And it's incredible that she said that, because what I've noticed is, you know, in older age, outside of childhood, most transitions that I've at least seen are from male to female. Younger population, female to male, which makes a lot of sense because girls are vastly more insecure about their bodies, more neurotic and things of that nature during those adolescent phases. Not to say that, you know, this is a blanket statement, but generally speaking, that's what the science says, that young girls become, you know, more aware of their surroundings, more aware of themselves, you know, self-conscious, neurotic at higher levels than the boys are. So it would make sense that the girls would then disassociate from themselves. And then in older stages of life where, you know, these boys have kind of had these experiences where, especially in this modern day, where manhood, masculinity is sort of under attack, then you have boys who are now growing up and become men and think, well, it probably is better for me to be a woman. I'm probably going to get, you know, more validation, more attention, more care. You know, we're seeing that the male loneliness rates and things of that nature are drastically higher. I mean, this isn't to create some sort of victim narrative, because we all go through our stuff, but there is a reality as far as, you know, if you are a man in the society, it is likely going to be a lot more of a challenge for you to be affirmed, to be validated for your own existence. Whereas being a woman, I mean, with the feminist movement into third wave feminism and the modern feminist, it's like, you know, not only are you better than the man, but you are more than all. You don't need no man. The society doesn't need man. Men are trash. All that sort of rhetoric is commonplace and it's accepted. And so again, it creates these dynamics where people are willing to go to the extremes, especially those who already have that underlying mental illness. They're willing to go to the complete extremes to quote unquote solve this problem, only to create a bigger problem in the long run.
cause of your suffering.
Yes.
Okay. And this therapist was effective.
Yeah, very.
Okay, and so what were the consequences for your symptoms of depression and anxiety?
Just really resolved pretty quickly. I mean, I still
Any
was...
medication associated with that?
I was on medication when I was 15. I started being put on antipsychotics and antidepressants.
Oh, yeah.
but
That
by
was
the-
when you were still taking testosterone?
Yes.
Okay,
And
so
by
you
the
went off the
time-
testosterone?
Yeah.
You went off the psych meds?
Yes.
Before you went to therapy?
No, I went off the psych meds around the time I was going to therapy with a second therapist, and then I stopped testosterone after that.
But your depression and anxiety resolved,
Yeah.
even though you stopped taking testosterone.
Yes.
Why?
I think the main factor was definitely the testosterone because
Okay, so that quelled
Yeah.
the psychosis
That
symptoms.
quelled
But
the
why do you think your
psychosis.
depression and anxiety went away?
I think it was because I was actually going through therapy that was actually talking about my
Dealing with exactly what is going on as opposed to creating a synthetic version of the solution. That is always and forever the solution. Again, there are traumas that you didn't deserve to go through, she didn't deserve to go through, I didn't deserve to go through. But when it comes to the healing process, there's nothing we can do to mask it. You know, it's like in most of our general lives, we use little things, little drink here, little smoke here, little more food extra here, sugar over here, right? Shopping over here, social media over here. Things to mask the pain as opposed to confronting it and growing through it in order to go through it. When we mask it and we continue to hide behind it, we create larger and larger coping mechanisms. And sometimes there are those that we cannot return from. Sometimes there are those which will literally take your life, if not strip the quality of your life from you. Imagine one day you're just trying to mask a little bit of the pain with a little bit of drink, and the next day you're full-blown alcoholic. You've lost your family, you've lost your kids, you've lost your job, you've lost everything that you love, and you're now living in the streets. That's a reality. Well, this is no different, except that this is now having an effect on the kids before they have a chance to actually mature and to get to a place where they can now make the decision for themselves. They've now made sometimes an irreversible decision. Imagine as a man cutting off your you know what. Imagine that. Now what? Now what? Oh, but you can just get a new one, they'll replace it. The fact that we have to have that conversation in the first place shows us just how far we have gone. But again, at an individual level, we make better decisions for ourselves. And then at a kind of scale, global level, societal level, we have to take care of the kids. We have to care more about community again, and not in the synthetic sort of way, oh, kumbaya. No, I mean, we got to make sure that the ideologies that we're pushing, the value systems that we're holding are not going to be in opposition to these kids, because they are us. They are the generation. If we had something greater that we grew up in, if we had been protected in better ways, then, our traumas would have likely not have to have been traumas. And so we can do something different for the next generation. But so long as we allow ourselves to be given over to this quasi compassion and empathy, which is not really empathy at all it is, again, fearful adults or narcissistic adults. And there's a lot of those out here. There's a lot of those who like the attention that comes from this. And there are those who are afraid to confront the evil face first. So appreciate y'all for tuning in. Again, if you want to watch the video, make sure to click the link below. Peace. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up, you know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises, you get to praising.